So I have the honor of introducing the Jose Vilson. Jose and I we met 4 years ago over the internet. We were both internet bloggers, but we didn't meet in person until 2013 after he nominated me gratefully for a TED Talk. And then we met, and he has just inspired me and has moved me so much as a young educator to continue going into the field. He has created a beautiful movement online called EduColor, which has brought together other teachers of color who really believe in social justice pedagogy and teaching for justice. He is a mentor to me and so many others in a time where so many of us are discouraged from going into the education field. He has been able to inspire me and continue pushing me on and reminding me that it's so important for all of us who want to fight for justice and teach for justice, continue going into the field. So I'm so excited for Jose to be here and for all of you to have the opportunity to be inspired for him. I'll let his work and his speech speak for himself. So please give a round of applause for Jose.
Good morning, class. Hi. That's the only piece I ever repeat over and over again. Those of you who've been at NJA convention, were y'all there? No? So it wasn't a turn up for y'all? In the interest of highlighting what Prof. Jorge had mentioned, I'd like to start with a little chant, if y'all don't mind. I know Jacob is going to be all part of this. So what do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
And if we don't get it?
No one gets it.
Okay, hear the words. So if we don't get it,
Shut it
shut it
down.
down. If we don't get it,
Shut it down.
if we don't get it,
Shut it down.
okay, y'all ready? You ready? Okay, so what do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
And if we don't get it,
Shut it down.
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 That was a beautiful way to start things. So here's the thing, right? I have this book, and I should have talked about this more at length at NJEA, but this book, This Is Not a Test, isn't just a book. It's my baby. Like, not obviously my real baby, but like, but in a very major way, like you have a piece of me when you get this book. So one of the things that people always say is, why are teachers not part of the conversation? Why is it that you have to leave in order for you to get any recognition for the work that you do? So, for instance, just in 2014, like that era, that school year, 2013, 2014, there was a bunch of books that came out, and I'm very happy for them. Confessions of a Bad Teacher, yada, yada, yada. So on, I forgot all of them because guess what? I stayed. And I stayed in teaching for the last 11 years. I've been doing it in Washington Heights, and I've been doing it in the very spaces where a lot of people say the kids can't do it. Right. So when I come out with a book, people are like, oh, well, we don't know what's going to happen here because this guy's actually going to stay and write? Like, who does that? Oh, yeah, I do, right? And then I keep talking about these things. I keep bringing up the issues. I keep knocking on people's doors. The very next day after I did the book release party for my book, I was already talking in Arnie Duncan's office for whatever reason. And we were talking about the very things that we're going to talk about today, which are teacher diversity, issues of teacher leadership, but more importantly about race, class, and social justice. So that's kind of the preface for what you need to know. But I like to engage you just a little bit. So I want you to pick one person or three, whatever you got in your click there, and I'd like you just to describe yourself. Take a good few minutes, let's say 2 minutes. Talk to each other about how many words would you need to describe yourself as an educator or a future educator. I'll give you a couple minutes. Pick a partner, talk. I am curious to hear from the audience. No, I love it. It's fun. Oh wait, let me do the teacher thing. I'll wait. I'll wait. It's cool.
You gotta get the look.
Yeah, I gotta get the look, but like it's a permanent look. Good people in the back. I love y'all, but we need to get this going. So, I'll take three. One.
Basically, I'm a rebel rouser. I'm an activist. I want to be social justice. I want to be a voice. Teachers need to have that voice. I'm speaking up.
Nah, it's all love. I added them on Facebook, so you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you just
so that's three. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, two.
Two. Okay. Mentor and ambitious.
Love it. So now we just average that, right? Like he gave a lot, she gave a little. Three. Thank you. I'll take one more. Yes.
Three of us agreed we are innovative, dialogic, and creative.
And creative. Okay. So here's my thing, right? So how we see ourselves is real cool. But then, you know, the way I might describe myself, I think like I'm dope. Like I think I'm gangster. Like, I think I got it all together. But then it's like,
always lying.
ooh yeah,
You always lying.
feels so good.
Oh my God.
I could be lying, right? Like, and that's the thing. Like, there's a perception that we think we have because we have to motivate ourselves to get started, right? At 5:30 in the morning, I don't know who gets up at 5:30 in the morning here.
I do.
Okay, so y'all about that life, right? Like, there is no rooster to wake us up. There's an iPhone and maybe like snooze, and that's it. If you're about that life, you know you have to prep yourself up. You have to be like the biggest, the greatest, you know? I mean, some of us are a little bigger than others, but fair. You caught that. Here's something else, though. I want to see what you think your students think about you. I'd love for you all to take a couple minutes and talk with the same people and see what you think your students would say about you. But don't lie though. Okay? Go, 2 minutes. Where I know y'all gonna be super honest with me because you're good teachers of teachers and students of students and such, etc. Stephen,
Yeah.
Amazing.
Come on, man.
Okay, so I'm currently in the GSC to get my dance education's master's.
Cool.
So I don't teach in a public school setting yet,
Sure.
but I do teach dance on the weekends.
Love
and,
it.
I think my students would say that I'm engaging and creative.
Okay, Jacob.
My students would have said I was weird. That's not how I would describe myself. That's definitely how they saw me.
Okay, fair enough. That's a general description. I've seen your Snapchat. Anyone else? I got one more.
Real.
Huh?
Real.
Real. Oh, like you keep it real. Like,
My kids think I'm real.
I love it. No, I'm all about that because the thing is too, right? For a lot of us, though, because I noticed some of you were quiet, and I respect that. For the way that students see us, it could be totally different. I literally had a few students who I was teaching last summer, student teachers, who are like, they think I'm weird as hell. Like, and of course, there was the other part where like, they think I'm white. I'm like, okay, well, that's a conversation we need to have, right? People think I'm black. Okay. These are things that we need to think about, right? Like, what are we coming in with, and what are the prejudices that we have? And the only way that we can really understand ourselves is through this process of excavation and really trying to get really reflective. So I'd like to share a little bit about who I am, as y'all were so generous with all of your contributions here. So my parents are from the island of Quisqueya. One is from one side, one is from the other, otherwise known as Dominican Republic and Haiti. So my mom is Dominican, and my father is Haitian. And some of you are laughing because they don't get along, and that's cool. And some people think they're black, and some people know they're black, and that's fine too. I get the way real, right? And I guess they commiserated in Miami, and I was transported in a real small vessel to New York City, where I would remain for the rest of my life. So the Lower East Side has this thing, right? Like, I chose this picture intentionally. There's this layer, right, where like you have the Williamsburg Bridge, which took a lot of the folks who made the Lower East Side a Jewish neighborhood and transported them all the way into Williamsburg. So once Williamsburg Bridge was finished, the largest neighborhood for Jewish folks in that area went from being the Lower East Side to Williamsburg. So all that was left was a whole bunch of apartments for Puerto Rican folks, Black people, and then eventually Dominicans, such as my mom. But then like right over that, right, you have like these brown buildings, but we can always see the skyscrapers, right? You could always see the empire looming over what's going on. So it was so obvious what was happening, which was like the income inequality was happening right in front of us. And we had to live in that environment, knowing full well we were in one building, but somewhere deep out there, we could probably reach it, but we would never actually get to that level. That was the message that was always sent. And so these are things that I was growing up with, even with my real nice sweater. So I really, I wasn't always woke, right? Like, I didn't come from a background where my parents felt like they could teach me about, Che Guevara. They could teach me about Angela Davis. They couldn't teach me about all these good things that I, would have formed my identity. But the one thing I did have around me was a lot of poetry. I had a lot of salsa growing up. I had a lot of merengue. I could do a little bit, but not today. I mean, never mind. I won't get into that. I already tried to shut the building down like 13 minutes ago, so I'm good. So I think one of the things we need to consider, right, is, we have all these influences all around us, and it looks fine. And then we have to think about how we walk into school. So there's like the us that's outside of school, and we don't have an identity for school yet. But then when we walk in there, we have to develop an identity for what schooling is and how schooling looks. So here's something. I was always a real good student. I mean, I had really good grades, and I was so, I don't mean that's a brag. I was like, I'm astonished. Like, I think back, I'm like, wow, I really got A's like on all these report cards. Like, I was throwing them up. Like, I was doing so well. Like, I was getting the awards. I mean, at some point, I ditched homework and I was still getting A's. I was like, oh snap! Like, this is real good. I was fortunate to go to like a Head Start program. So I was already reading by the time I got to to year 3, year 4. Like I was already like I guess a quasi genius. I guess. And then you're right, quasi genius. Like who says that? And then I had walked in to school. I was already ready to read. I didn't know very much about how to socialize, but I could teach myself Spanish, so I did teach myself that because my mom was like, "You can speak it, but here's a Bible, go figure it out." I said, "Okay, here I am." And I guess at some point in 6th grade, I went from a public school to a private all-boys Catholic school called Nativity Mission, and there I encountered a whole lot of different experiences. I was a real good student there too, but I didn't always have the survival skills to manage what was going on inside me as an adolescent, which is kind of ironic too, right? Because you fast forward, I'm a middle school teacher now, so like I feel that all the time. But I had one teacher who I'll just call him Mr. Missile because he had like this this mug like about yay big. It was filled with coffee up to yay high, right? So you think about like he's trying to finish this by like third period, so he's amped up, right? Which is fine, right? Like this is for me, like this is good, right? And by then, like by 4th, 5th period, I'm like, okay, you know what? I can settle down now. I'm amped all the way. I'm good. This man decided to bring a vessel like that big, and he's like, oh, I'm just gonna challenge everybody. Like, y'all, everybody's gonna get to work. Like this tall white guy, you're all gonna get it. So we were arguing one day about some sort of like participle, some language or whatever, and I just asked him a simple question like, why does it look like this when it has an ing at the end, but it's still a noun? Like, how does that work? Because again, I just have to ask. He's like. And like you could just kind of feel him erupting, like he's gonna do something. I'm like, okay, so this is what's gonna pop off. All right, let me just breathe. What are you talking about? This is the way the English language works. If you're not gonna be doing English, then why are you here? Yo, my man, like, okay, take a breather. Oh, I just asked you what. No. You're gonna rewrite this, and you're gonna read it, and what I say goes. Okay, but we're all kids of color, and this is the way you're gonna talk to us. Like, I just want to know what English. So like I'm really like amped up. Like, okay, so this is what schooling is gonna be like. I fortunately, left this classroom, got to be in 8th grade, excelled there too. Got into Xavier High School, which was all boys Catholic middle school again. Mostly, unlike my middle school, mostly Irish and Italian folks. And there's where I encountered something interesting. I decided that I was gonna become as acculturated as possible in order to survive. Some of you know what that's like, right? Where like you walk into a place and you're like, I really don't need everybody to talk about like my skin color. I don't need people to talk about my culture. I need people to just say that I am a student, and that's all I was. So again, not woke at all by any means. Like I wish I did this time, right? Where people are like, Black Lives Matter. I'm like, yes, the Black Lives did, but before then I didn't have that language. So I'm still learning this language, and I'm going through my classes, making it through honors. And you know what honors classes are like? Don't lie. And as you walk in there and you're the only kid of color, the issues start to happen. And I had to confront the most senior teacher in the entire building. He decided in my English class that he was going to ignore me. So I'm here like, okay, so this is you. And I'm like, so I'm telling him, so the question was about something having to do with Shakespeare, whatever. And I think it was a multiple choice question. I said, D. What was that? D. What? What'd you say? D, I said. And then he picks like some other kid and he goes, D. Oh, yeah, that's the answer. I was like, oh man, no way. I didn't analyze that, and I didn't understand that until I started to see like very few red marks, but in 85 of my papers. Then I went to other kids. I saw lots of red marks, a 90 on theirs. Yeah. Okay, so this is the way this starts. This is what we call microaggressions for those of you who are woke. Yeah. And if you're not, microaggressions, know it, learn it, love it. When you start getting that critical consciousness and you don't have that vocabulary, you find ways to dig, and you get really reflective about the way that you work. And so when we think about some of the ways that some of us learn how to get woke, I got it through hip hop. Obviously, some of the people who y'all grew up on. Well, I mean, how old are y'all? Some of you, who's the 80s baby? 80s baby? before then, and that's okay. I love y'all too. 90s babies. I was listening to A Tribe Called Quest, R.I.P. Fife. I was listening to a little bit of Rakim, though I love him so much more now that I'm older, right? And of course, I still listen to Biggie, to Tupac. Oh my God. So many of these rappers. Oh yes, Lauryn Hill. Top 10 MC.
Yep.
Okay,
Hands
just
down.
it would have been top 5, except never mind. MTV Unplugged shouldn't have happened.
I love that.
Yes, but as
We like the
rap,
miseducation one.
not R&B. Like as a musician, yes, but as rap. Anyway, no doubt. I love this, right? Like, don't ever bring up top 5s with other people because then it becomes a whole discussion. So here's my thing. Like, one song that inspired me to become a teacher. Who gets weaker, the king or the teacher? It's not about a salary, it's all about reality. Teachers teach and do the world good. Kings just rule and most are never understood. What? What'd you say? Like, I was so blown by that. So throughout my activism at Syracuse University, I decided that I was going to listen to all these lyrics and get some history from that. I started enrolling in African American Studies courses, Hispanic courses, etc. I became the president of La Lucha, which is like the Latino organization there, like the main one. And I became the education chair. Ding, ding. No longer was I going to be a computer scientist. No longer was I going to be a code monkey for, $12 an hour. Like, I was going to be teaching kids. It's just a matter of how I was going to approach that. And so I graduated, and I was real happy to do that. Yes, that is my mom. I got that saccharin for your coffee this morning, right? I think one of the things that I think about, of course, growing up, being like, yes, mama, we did it, I made it, I did it. And then I come out of school unemployed. Like, I just spent tens of thousands of dollars getting a degree from an institution that I was not gonna get paid from. With how many loans? What? So 6 months, 7 months actually, I was unemployed, and I had begged my friend to please find me a job. And he's like, okay, so you want the job that I had in high school? He's like, yes, I'll take it. You mean with the same salary that I had in high school? Sure. And of course, I walk in there and I find out they're gonna pay me worse than a high schooler. So I'm getting paid $10.50 when my friends who had gotten the job 5 years earlier was getting paid $11.50. I said, okay, this is good. So I'm gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to work this out. And in the meantime, I also started to do this thing called blogging. I don't know if y'all heard of it. It's this thing where like people type and somebody's gonna respond, you hope. And if they don't, then but you get in your feelings, and then you write again. Then you write again, and then like you get strains you get some sort of arthritis going on in your fingers, and then you write again. And then you just keep doing it until you get real good at it. But then I became a teacher. And I did it through the NYC Teaching Fellows Program. One of the worst mistakes they ever made was give me a rejection letter a year after I graduated. Because 2 weeks after, they're like, no. Okay, you know what? Come back. I need you. We need you. Oh, yeah, good. I'm happy for you. Because I'm going to make this work. And as a matter of fact, this classroom was not just my classroom second year of teaching. It's also been my classroom for my 9th year, or my 10th year, and now. So I've been doing this now for a real long time. Some of you who've been following my Instagram know I've been cleaning up that room like nobody business. Like, and there's some serious excavation that I had to do in that classroom, but it's perhaps one of the most comfortable classrooms in the building thanks to that work. So I treasure my, oh man, I'm gonna get, I think being in the classroom is one of those things that you just can't replicate. You just can't do, you have to be in it to know what it is. And that's why I get so frustrated with a lot of the people who want to talk about being a teacher. Oh, so then go be a teacher, see what that's like. Don't just do it for a day, right? Like do it for like 180 plus days, and think about, you see all those little breaks, right? All the little breaks that you get, you're still whoever you are as a teacher. Like, you are grading papers. And there's all like that mental work too, right? So you are still thinking about that one kid who you're like, why? Why are you like that? And as a matter, it's so funny. Like, this is the first year I haven't had to think about a kid on a Saturday. Because I was like, I need to disconnect because this is too much. Like, I think about the Monday night, Tuesday night. It's like, okay, so when do I get a life? And so my Sunday night, though, I'm thinking about kids again. So 6 out of 7 days. And, we don't, politicians are going to come in, they're going to say, oh, look, I can do teaching. Then they walk in, they got like 3 or 4 handlers. One has a lesson plan, one has the coffee, one does the papers. Nah, chill. No, I do this. I do all of this. Right. Oh, what do you mean you're going to just walk in there and like teach? Yeah. Like, this is what I do, but I love it because not because I'm a masochist, but because I love it. But because I love what I do. And so when I think about what a blessing is, blessings on blessings on blessings, lessons on lessons on lessons. I beat this classroom like a reverend. What was that? Go ahead. I love this. Oh, who are these people? And so here's some things I think about as a teacher, because I know this is where the fun part begins. When you control a man's thinking, and this is where I was in tune to this a whole long time ago when I first started teaching. When you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. You can create a classroom where it's liberating and it's positive and it's wonderful, or you can create a classroom that's super quiet and everybody thinks that you're actually teaching, and you may not be. And the kids may tell you that they are learning, but they're only doing it to please you and not necessarily to learn. And that's where the struggle is. And you're going to have to find that person. If you're a future teacher, if you are a teacher currently, you know what that's like. You know what that's about. And one of the books I would obviously suggest to anybody to read is The Miseducation of the Negro. And if you haven't read it, read it again and again, because that's real stuff. And sometimes those are the things that start creeping in when you look at the legacy of education reform in this country. So when I think about schools, right, and Jersey has a lot of issues with schools. Please. This is idea of like charter schools and public schools, and coming from New York City, I can tell you, like, we're one of the grounds for all this education reform nonsense. I think about, you have a school get governors to come in and say the same thing, right? That ain't that woke. Say more.
They only about public when they need the money.
No, they're about the public, not giving it back. You know what I mean? You know what that's about. So thank you for that, sis. Now, there's also this part about private school, which is also, believe it or not, problematic. Because if you think about it, private schools are meant to segregate white affluent parents from the general populace. The reason why private schools don't come up is because you can't talk about it. Have you ever noticed that the conversation is always about public versus charter? It's never about like public versus private. And the reason why private schools started going up was because integration became a law. And so when integration became that law, then it was like, oh snap, no, we can't be regulated. We don't want to be regulated. We need to be separate from that. And this is as a graduate of a private school. So if I'm telling you this, it's coming from the heart. It's not coming like I'm trying to be all up in your face, though. Y'all can get that work. The other thing too is, though, public schools aren't that public anymore either. When we use the word public, we mean democratic. We mean semi-autonomous with some sort of check and balance between autonomy and regulation, right? Like that's what we mean when we say it. But that's not what they mean when they say it. They mean a whole different thing. They mean a whole set of issues that unfortunately do not have to do anything with the people in this room. Not even you, Miss Jorge. Not even you. I wish you could, but she got to teach y'all. So here's some things I always think about. Just give it some thought, right? I just want you to give it some thought. If this is a public school, right? Why do you have that many private vendors coming into our building telling us what to do.
Exactly.
Have you ever noticed, like, when you get to a really good peak, like you're at year 5, and then they change up the third-party provider, and the third-party provider comes in and says, nah, you are all right, but this is the way we want to teach. And then you try to do that thing that you were supposed to teach, and then about 2 or 3 years later, now which is the provider? That provider got too expensive, so we got to go to the next one. And then you tried that one, and then you got to go right back to the one that you were doing before. Like, multiple intelligences has come up every 4 years. Like, how many intelligences do we really need to understand that this ain't working? Differentiation comes up every year because Thomason has a definition. Blah, blah, blah has a definition. And then they tell you, oh, this is the way you differentiate. Well, so if everybody in the school has to differentiate the same way, you're standardizing differentiation with the whole purpose. Or do you want to differentiate your standardization, which makes it a whole other mess, which you're like, when are we going to get it right? And what do we mean by right? I just mean like having a balance where it's like, okay, let me give you a framework. Like this is the sandbox you can play in, and you can do whatever you want in it, as long as like, we can work with what you're actually doing, which is fine. But then you're going to tell me, okay, in order to build a sandcastle, you must use this very bucket, but this bucket has the same exact shape with all different colors. So pick whichever you want. That's what's going on in our public schools. So how is that public? When? How is that democratic? How does that work? And so this is not to diss anybody who's a third-party provider, by the way. I do want to say that there are excellent ones. However, you, as everybody, must recognize the complicity that we have towards our system and the way it's working. And until we revolt in the best ways possible, and I'll talk about that later, then we got to massage that. We got to find a way to subvert that. So to that end, looking at just NYC schools history, I came in at a time when this guy decided that he was going to change our structure for schooling 8 times in 11 years. So, and he did it purposely to disrupt. Like, he was like, oh, I disrupted this system. I got New York City public schools to move however I wanted. Like, he was smiling about this. And I'm here like, dude, like this, there are kids here. There are adults who care about kids here. And you're just going to keep moving things around because it makes you feel happy because you think you're changing something. And this is what you're about. And so at some point we decided to drum up support, right? Like, I guess the union, they were high, but I think there were people on the ground who were like, this is not the way that public schools should run. And so when we think, and I want you to, and I'm going to give you an analogy here, and then I'm going to hit you in the face with it later. When you have a union, you're supposed to fight for what's happening in that space, correct? Correct. And so it's not just about benefits, it's also about having a set of principles by which you operate all the time. And so when you look at the way that Joel Klein, Michael Bloomberg, whoever, Kathy Black, not doing it today. When you have that sort of element happening in your schools all the time, and you have the leader of the largest public school system in the entire nation say, I'm going to stand up in Success Academy, and this is how I want my schools to run. Dude, like, you are the leader of the public schools. You had an opportunity, and you decided that you were going to cheer on everybody to be in the charter world. What does that say about you that you can't run effectively what's supposed to be happening? It's not the unit's fault because they're like, oh, I guess so. They're like, I guess so. So then do that. Be that leader. But he didn't want to be that leader. He just wanted to disrupt. He just wanted to cheer on Eva Moskowitz. That was his thing, right? And y'all seen the video already, so I don't want to go into that. So we organized to get Bill de Blasio into office. A lot of us educators did, right? And we were like, yes, Bill de Blasio, Bill de Blasio. And then the minute he says Eva Moskowitz, he gets pushed back from the media, like, no way. All of Bloomberg's friends were like, no way. So you can't even talk about charter schools in a bad way in the media, or unless they just want to take off your mayoral powers. Like, this is wild. Like, this is wild to me. But what is a person to do? And then who do you turn to when you have a liberal mayor, but then you have this guy right above him, and they're fighting against each other, right? So you think, oh, you're done because you got Michael Bloomberg out, You got Joel Klein out. You got all these like MBA folks. No disrespect to MBAs, but people who were in positions of power who weren't educators. You got them all out, and then he comes in and says, "Nah, we're friends. Me and Eva Moskowitz are friends, and I'm going to show up to your charter rally, even though I give the money for all the public schools to do what they're supposed to do." Right? These are things that we have to think about, and this is systemic, right? But of course, y'all not off the hook either. Y'all not off the hook either. And so this picture says two things to me. Number one, it says we need to find ways to resist at a systemic level, even though we don't think we are all that systemic. We think we just teach the kids. You are all political agents, whether you like it or not. Right? And so the way you enact your politicalness is through advocating for better policy. Notice they have the same roots, so use that roots. And so here's the other thing too, right? You see that finger wag to a woman.
Yes.
Look how many women we have in this audience. Look how education is dominated by women on the teacher level, but dominated by men on the admin level. So whenever I ask you, and this is, I know I'm a black man, but I'm telling you this, the intersections of feminism and education are real. So whenever we improve the conditions of education, we improve the conditions of many women. Okay? Just keep it real. And then of course it gets layered because there's that issue of color too, right? So think about all the urban communities in which you have the black and brown women who've always been there to support that school, regardless of what the ed reforms were, and then all the black males were asked to be deans and overseers. Right? What? You thought I was gonna go there. I did. All right, hey, this is an open audience. Listen, do not I see y'all. Take your deep breath. I'm gonna give y'all that hope. But then I also want you to think about the pedagogy too, right? So I'm not sure what's happening here. But if you think about teaching like a champion, how can you teach like a champion if you're not winning? Who's winning when someone teaches like a champion? Who? It ain't y'all. Because you have to feel like, oh, Doug Lemoff might walk into my room right now and tell me I do not have the proper technique. Right is right, according to him. But then one is right, not right, except when you're right. So if you're the only one that's right, then what happens to the rest of us who aren't? Right? You think about, again, I don't want to go to standardization again, but think about how people say, oh, you could do whatever you want in your classroom, but they have to pass this test. And here's this test, here are the standards, here's everything you need to know about this test. But you can do whatever you want in your classroom. We're not gonna be in there. We're just gonna visit, 4, 6, 8 times a week. If we don't like you, we're gonna throw shade at you. We may even get, don't mind me, okay. They're gonna get your own union to say that you are not a good teacher based on a Danielson framework, which by the way, Danielson's like, no, please don't make a checklist out of this. 2 minutes later, checklist. Oh snap, you mean, you didn't put like 3 colored cups on the top of your table? You are not differentiating. I told you about that. You mean you're using chalk instead of markers? How dare you? How dare you? But this is all you got. Like, I don't have a whiteboard. No, I said marker. All right, but come on. Like, you're not making this easy for me. And so, the thing I treasure about my class, and I hate to say it, is my door is semi-open. Like, I tell everybody, yes, you can walk in however you like, do whatever you got to do. But if you're going to investigate me, I'd rather you talk to my kids. And if you talk to my kids, you get the best assessment possible. You ever notice, like, you can have, like, one teacher who's, like, supposedly good according to administrators, but then you have, like, the other teacher who's, like, the kid's favorite? Aren't we teaching kids? We're not teaching standards, we're teaching kids. We're not teaching curriculum, we're teaching kids. So it's not so much, and the kids will tell you whether or not they're learning from the adult, right? Like, there's a big difference between saying, oh, that teacher's mean, and I can't learn from them. Or that teacher's nice, and I'm not learning from them. Or that teacher is mean, and I'm learning. I think they often prioritize learning way more. You may have that one kid who's kind of like hasn't had his bacon, egg, and cheese that morning, and then you gotta, okay, so I'll let you rock. But then the 29 other ones, yes, they're gonna be like, Mr. Vilson is the best. And I learned math from him. I am officially mathematical, right? Like, I'm making that statement, right? Like, I can't always get into like social justice movements, but I can certainly teach math in a way that assures their humanity, that assures that they're actual people. And so when I think about that, I think about Robert Moses. By the way, Radical Equations, another book to read. He started from this. I see some people in the back are wanting me to start from the bottom. Now we're here. Okay, I got you. He started from the civil rights movement, right? He was a civil rights leader, and he started voter registrations and getting people into the voting booth. And then at some point, he becomes the math god.
Yeah.
If you're an atheist, I'm sorry, math god, lowercase g.
Yeah.
For my other folks, G-D. I love people, man. I'm old, don't get me wrong. Totally Lower East Side, right? So algebra, once solely in place as the gatekeeper for higher math and the priesthood, who gains access to it, now is the gatekeeper for citizenship. And people who don't have it are like the people who couldn't read and write in the industrial age. But because of how access to the learning, algebra, was organized in the industrial era, its place in society under the old jurisdiction, it has become not a barrier to college entrance, but a barrier to citizenship. So if y'all can't do math, innumeracy, I would argue, is as big as illiteracy. Because the whole point of my class isn't so much that they have to come out as radicals, though some have. That's been an interesting situation. Never mind, I won't go there. They did, however, have doors open to them that they otherwise wouldn't. So instead of having 2 or 3 doors, they may have 7 because they love math, because they remember those math memories, because they didn't have to drop out of the first year of high school, which, by the way, is a really strong indicator for whether or not they're going to keep going, right? That math, that first year of math, right? That's such a big deal. And if they don't have that foundation, it's off. It's curtains, oftentimes. So the other thing too about affirming our kids is that Black lives do matter. And the argument is always, well, all lives matter. I thought all lives do. Yes, you may be right. However, they won't matter until the least of us matter. The ones who are most disenfranchised, the ones whose schooling often too much depends on a lot of people who don't really want them to learn.
Right.
And so I will implore for all of you as change agents in your classroom, we can do this together. We can make Black Lives Matter together the minute that you say, I'm going to be a good teacher for the students in front of my class first, and then to the standards and everything else second. Those students have to be learning from you. They have to love you. They have to care about you. They have to think that you want them to learn, right? And it's not like this Michelle Reed thing where it's like, oh, 3 seasons in a row, yada, yada. No. Just worry about you. Worry about what you do. Worry about the way that you subvert a lot of the things that are happening in New Jersey, and worry more about that classroom and how you're going to project that love and care for all of your students. So a few things I'm just going to skip through real quick. So for example, on Teachers Diversity, please note, there's only a good like 17% of us who are of color all across the nation. Of course, it's highly populated in urban areas and other sections of the country, but generally, it's a fairly white situation. And what I mean by that is, and of course, people are like, oh, wait, I didn't know I was white. Yes, you may be. I just want you to consider the following. If you are a white person in this place, you have to consider the positionality you have with teaching kids. And oftentimes, you are given the option of leaving to a place where there are more white people like you. Teachers of color, however, are most likely to not be hired at those places and have to stay at the very same place. Not that they don't love it, but they have to be at that same place because other folks won't hire them. They get hired at the places that get dominated. Right. So, but then the other part too is that I'm not saying that white folks can't teach children of color. In fact, I am suggesting that we need to be more diverse, not just in our skin color and our, our features. We have to be more diverse in our thought.
Right.
So when you have a Black male teacher, right, and yes, I'm speaking from experience here, when you look at him, do you see him as an expert or do you see him as a dean? Do you see him as an overseer? Do you see him as a slave keeper? Or do you see him as, wow, we can really talk about math in a real professional way and we both have this situation on? Same for my Asian folks, right? Like, they might look at you like, oh, look, all they're good for is math. All they're good for is to do this section right here, right? All these stereotypes about how smart they are, yada, yada. No, they may actually have some really good expertise and some really good knowledge for you to help you out with your own pedagogy. But unfortunately, our school system is such that they don't want us to all share our knowledge because that's mass resistance in education. And that's a real big problem for a lot of folks who don't want our kids to learn, all right? So I just want to keep that in mind. And of course, yes, our white folks too, y'all have things to contribute, but everybody knows that because all lives matter. No, Black lives matter. The other thing too, right? In Boston, and let's think about this, right? As I mentioned integration earlier, in Boston, they were like, yeah, we're gonna integrate, we're gonna forcibly integrate. And then folks said, nah, chill. Yes, they said chill. They don't want people to learn. And so to that end, I do want you to consider how historically integration often meant thousands of teachers, tens of thousands of teachers of color had to be removed from the ranks in order to make way for people who were young, white, and suburban. And so the situation we have here with this resegregation, where we're more segregated than ever before, that's happening because there was that resistance. And we need to be the resistance to that resistance. We need to push back and say, no, this is the way this is going to work, and we're going to make this work better. So I ask you to change the narrative, and one of the ways that I do that is by my team. So, you know, you see the hashtag Educolor. That was one of the very first things I started to think about is how do we create mass movements? And one of the ways that I do that is on the internet. On Twitter, you think, oh, Twitter, 140 characters, that ain't nothing. But within that span of the last 2 years, we've managed to change the dialogue. You notice John King, for example, I don't know if y'all seen him like in the last year, but my man is saying some really woke stuff. He's saying things that I've written on my blog. He's saying the very things which I've been asking. And it's not by accident. It's because of mass movement. But it's not enough because we know John King's history and he needs to work on that too. Right? These are things that are happening, but it's not just me. It's folks in the front, has some folks in the back. But it's not just them. They're members, they're part of the work, but so are you. If you are doing this work, if you are really conscious about the way that you approach pedagogy, you are part of that work. I also need people who like actually do this work that don't consider themselves Educolor, right? I can't speak the way I speak if y'all not gonna teach the way we need to teach, right? So what's the point of me getting up here and saying, oh wow, like we need to learn something. We need to learn how to teach kids of color if nobody's gonna do it. Right? So leaders aren't just leaders. They work with people and they work. I don't have to lead from the front. I can lead from the back. I can lead from the side. I can lead from wherever I want. But if I'm leading, that means that everybody else, well, I don't really like followers. So that's my thing too. Like I'm from New York. We don't follow people. That's creepy. Steffi Rivera says 16.5 followers. I want people following me. But I do want people to consider that they can activate their own learning. They can be radical in their own way. They can be gangster however they choose. I'll leave you with, because I'm going to be around all conference, so don't worry about questions. I got you. I'm here for what, 200? 200 plus? Yeah. Woo. No, so 100 times 10. So if y'all tell 10 people, right, that's 1,000 folk. If those 10 people tell 10 people, that's like, what is that, New Brunswick? I'm from a big city. Yeah, like I want you to be radical in your own way. I want you to go into your classrooms and be the best teachers possible. We need you out there. And again, I'm super hyper responsive to every single one. But I will also suggest to you that even if I'm not there, I want you to think about your kids and ask your kids, hey, how can I teach you better? Believe it or not, they got answers for days. Ask them. And then keep it real. Say, okay, so this is your path. I'm going to help you get to that path. But I do not need to be at the center of your path. Your path is your path. The way you take it, I can't judge you. But I am going to show you alternative pathways for you to get to where you need to get to. And so as a result, I'll ask you to think about the fact that some of us aren't just teachers, but we're also parents. Yes, my baby. And so, I know, Munchkin, I want to eat those cheeks. Alejandro has given me a sense of purpose now that I've never had before. I had 1,000 children before Alejandro, 1,000 children who I said, y'all are my kids, y'all are my babies. But now actually having my baby, I'm looking at the next 1,000 like, I gotta do something serious.
Yeah.
Like this is urgent for me.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Alejandro, for me, is what a lot of parents feel like for their own kids. And you may say, well, parents aren't that activated. They don't know. Some of them are working 6 to 12. Some of them are working in the factory. Some of them are working in places where you can imagine.
Yeah.
And the mere fact that you even said, hello, I think your child needs a little bit of work. And we're going to make that happen. We're going to drag them through graduation if we need to. Because I have a situation right now. And I'm like, I'm going to drag you through graduation, but you will graduate. You will do what you're supposed to do. The parent's going to be like, oh, snap. Somebody cares. That is the resistance to the systemic situations. Subvert, get in there, love. Because the system does not have love for a lot of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love. Thanks.
All right.
To you, here's my contact on Twitter. I am Jacob knows. I am hyper responsive. Don't add me on Snapchat though. I don't. Other than that, thank you all so much. I'll be around for you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.